Hi, it's Mrs. Clark. Welcome to our video lessons on ancient and world cultures. Today we're going to be focusing on classical China. In this video, we will have a quick overview of China's geography, the origin and beliefs of Confucianism, classical China's government, and China's achievements. Make sure that you've committed these items to memory. Remember your 8 essential questions located on those 8 posters below. Remember to constantly think about them while we're discussing our ancient cultures. Also, those highlighted words are super important and they will keep coming up over and over again as we discuss our ancient cultures. Culture, civilization, interdependence, and interrelationship. Make sure you're familiar with all of the definitions. A culture is a way of life of a people. Civilization is a complex way of life which contains organized political, economic, and social institutions. And remember that more than one culture can make up a civilization. Interdependence is how countries or cultures are mutually dependent upon one another. And interrelationship is a relationship showing that things have an effect on each other. Let's start with China's geography. China is the largest country in Asia and the third largest in the world, and due to its size, this country has varied landforms and climate. On the world map down below, you can see in red where China is located on the continent of Asia, and I included another map on the right that shows a zoomed in close-up of the continent of Asia and where China is located and the countries that surround it today. An important region of China is known as the North China Plain. Remember that plain is a flat area of land, and this is where historians believe the human settlement first began in China. And down there on the map, that yellow colored area is where the North China Plain is located, and I want you to pay attention to what physical features surround the North China Plain and why this was a prime area for the first human settlement to begin in China. Running through this plain is the Huang River, and more specifically the Huang River Valley, which is also known as the Yellow River Valley. It's also referred to as the cradle of Chinese civilization. Think about that for a moment. Cradle. Who lives in cradles or sleeps in cradles? Babies. Birth of life, the cradle of Chinese civilization. The Huang River often flooded and destroyed people's homes and crops, which gave it a resulting nickname of China's sorrow. And you can see in that bottom picture, the color of the Huang River is of a yellowish brownish color, which is where it got its other name, the Yellow River Valley. And you can see on the top map, the shaded green area is the Yellow River and kind of the area over which it would flood. Another important river in China is the Changjiang River, or also known as the Yangtze River. It's the third largest river in the world after the Nile and the Amazon. And I colored it there in red on the map. You can see where it is, kind of in the southern area of where the North China Plain was, and a picture of it down below. A very different color from our Yellow River previously. During the Han Dynasty, the region of the Changjiang became important to China's economy. This region developed an irrigation system which made agriculture very stable and productive. Now, if you watched our previous video on the Fertile Crescent in Mesopotamia, they also had an irrigation system which made agriculture stable and productive in their area. Lots of commonalities between these ancient cultures and their origins. The Changjiang River also became the political boundary between North China and South China due to the difficulty of crossing this river. It became kind of a natural border between these two areas because it was a difficult area to cross. Another important landform in China is the Gobi Desert, which is the 5th largest desert in the world. Along its edge are several important Silk Road trade cities, and that's where they were located. So on the map there on the left, you can see the Gobi Desert highlighted in yellow. It's near the northern border of China. And on the second map there on the right, you can see the red line is where the Silk Road route was located, and we will get to the blue line later, which is where the Great Wall of China was located. So our posters in terms of China's geography. How does geography influence a culture's trade and communication with other cultures? So how is early China's geography important to its beginning? China is a land of geographic differences that affect how the culture develops. So depending on where people settled in China would give them drastically different land and climate. Farmers near the Huang River Valley and the Changjiang River or the Yangtze River created irrigation systems to control the flooding of these rivers, and farmers in the mountainous regions used a system of terraces to grow their crops. So these people were able to adapt to their environment depending on where they settled in China to help produce plants and crops to help their life. The systems made agriculture very stable and productive, which is a main reason why people were able to settle in this area and thrive. So that's our lesson on China's geography. I invite you to go to your hyperdoc now and complete the matching section to China's geography. And when you're ready, you can move on to the next section in our video. Now we're going to take a look at the origin and beliefs of Confucianism. Confucius was born in 551 BC and died in 479 BC. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the letters BC and what they mean in regards to dates and times, I want you to think about a number line. Imagine the 0 on the number line and the numbers moving forward upwards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those would be the years that we are used to in our time. We live in 2020, so the year 2020. Imagine that on a number line. These times and dates that have to do with BC would be like traveling on the left side of our number line towards those negative numbers. So Confucius lived on the opposite side of our number line, if you will, in terms of time. So a very long time ago, considering you and I are living in the year 2020 currently when this video is being recorded, on our positive side of our number line. So Confucius was a scholar who developed and taught concepts that he felt would make China a better place to live. However, the government at the time that he was living didn't actually try out his ideas until several hundred years later after his death during the Han Dynasty, which we will learn about later. The main idea of Confucianism emphasized the importance of education, compassion, good government, art, and respecting one's ancestors. Ancestors would be your family, your elders that came before you. It was not considered a religion, but more a way of life, a way of living. His teachings were recorded by his students in a collection known as the Analects, and that's the picture there of the book that contains Confucius's teachings. One of Confucius's life works was translating and compiling the Book of Documents, which is an important ancient Chinese text. Confucius shared his outlook on life with his followers with many meaningful quotes, and those quotes continue to resonate with people today. And there's just some examples there on the screen of some of the quotes that Confucius is known for and has said. And if you went online and Googled more Confucius quotes, you might recognize a lot of the quotes as maybe some quotes that you use in your own speech or that you've heard other people use today, as they still are important to people today. True wisdom is knowing what you don't know. Everything has beauty, but not everyone can see it. Respect yourself and others will respect you. The man who moves a mountain begins by carrying away small stones. Our posters change over time. How has this culture changed over time? So thinking about Confucius's teachings, how have they changed over time and how have they impacted the world? Confucius was a Chinese scholar who became disheartened or upset by the way that human chaos he witnessed throughout his travels. He was upset with the way humans were living. He encouraged people to have a sense of humanity, respect for family, and humility. Even after his death, these ideas spread throughout China and the world, and they are still relevant to many people today. So that's it on our lesson right now on Confucius. I invite you to pause the video and go do your hyperdoc that matches with the teachings of Confucius and return to the video when you're ready for the next section. In this section, we're going to talk about classical China's government. So most of classical China was not a unified country. Regions were ruled by a number of clans, which were led by warrior kings. So if you think about previously in our talk of the Fertile Crescent, all these individual city-states is kind of how China was operating in classical times. They were not unified. They were all run by different people with different beliefs. Occasionally, one clan would become more powerful over everyone else, and they became powerful enough to control much of classical China. And they would start what we know today as a dynasty, which was ruled by an emperor. On the timeline down below, I circled the 4 dynasties that we are going to focus on briefly in our video today on classical China's government. The Shang dynasty was the first example of a dynasty in Chinese history, and archaeologists know about their history from writing on oracle bones, which tell about their time within the Shang dynasty. The Shang dynasty is the earliest ruling dynasty of China to be established in recorded history. Though other dynasties predate it, we don't know much about those other dynasties. We know a lot starting with the Shang dynasty. They ruled from 1600 to 1046 BC. Again, think about your number line. The BC means we're going to the left side of our number line towards those negative numbers, so a very long time ago. They were known for their advances in mathematics, astronomy, artwork, and military technology. The Zhou dynasty was the longest of the Chinese dynasties, and during its 800 years, new philosophies or ways of thinking emerged, and they continued to influence China for thousands of years. You can see on the map there where the Zhou dynasty was located in ancient classical China. The Qin dynasty began the construction of the Great Wall of China, and the terracotta clay warrior army was built to guard their emperor's tomb. A notable achievement of the Qin is that it unified China. So on the map, you can see where their empire was located, and you can see the Great Wall of China, which I'm sure most of us are very familiar with. And these terracotta clay warriors are down there on the bottom, and they were built to guard or protect the emperor's tomb when he died. The Han Dynasty is sometimes called the Golden Age of ancient China. It was the era of peace and prosperity and allowed China to expand into a major world power. Many of Confucius's ideas are now being incorporated into the Han Dynasty's government, as they believed that they couldn't rule the people by force. They started to think about Confucius's ideas and realized that they couldn't force people to do things, that they needed to move towards a more respect and humility and kindness. And you can see the Han Dynasty there on the map on the right. So our posters in terms of classical China's government. Why do cultures create government? How are governments different, and how are they the same? So starting with the Shang Dynasty, power was passed down through the ruling family until another family or ruler overthrew the dynasty. So one person would rule, and then when they passed on, the next person in their family would take over, and it would go through this family until another family became more powerful and overthrew them and took over, and we started a new dynasty. Thousands of years later, during the Han Dynasty, the idea developed that official positions should be given to qualified individuals who demonstrated their skills through a civil service exam. So we didn't have everyone vying for control. We had people who were qualified individuals to lead their country. So that's it for our lesson on China's government, classical China's government. So go back and do your hyperdoc that matches the lessons for today on government. And when you're ready, you can return to the video and we will conclude with our last section. Our last section is going to focus on China's achievements. What advances did they give to the world? Classical China had major advances in art, politics, technology, and trade that continue to affect our modern society. Many of the advancements and inventions that they created, we still use in our life today. Gunpowder, paper, printing, and the compass are sometimes called the 4 great inventions of ancient China, and we use all 4 of those things still in our life today. The Chinese dynasties created the Great Wall of China, which was considered to be their greatest accomplishment in architecture. It is one of the most notable structures, buildings in the world. And you can see pictures there of the Great Wall of China. Now, the Great Wall wasn't constructed under one dynasty. It was constructed over several dynasties and took a very long time to build. But you can do some more research on the Great Wall of China on your own. The armies in ancient China used bronze to create powerful weapons. They invented porcelain and also discovered a way to produce silk and began trading it to other cultures. And that's where the Silk Road comes into play. So change over time again. This is a popular poster. How has this culture changed over time? Classical China was an isolated civilization due to its geographical location. Lots of mountains and rivers prevented people from traveling to it. It was isolated from the rest of the world. The Silk Road, which was actually several different trade routes, connected China specifically to the Roman Empire, which is another culture we will learn about, and was their sole connection to the rest of the world. They were able to take the goods that they produced and trade them along this Silk Road trade route to make connections with other countries and cultures around the world. Valuable goods and ideas were traded along the route. The Chinese exported their goods like silk, porcelain, and they imported or bought items like glass, gold, and horses. Poster 3 deals with art. What can we learn by comparing art from different cultures? How is the art of one culture similar to and different from the art of another culture? The Great Wall of China was considered classical China's greatest architectural achievement, and we can learn a lot from studying this piece of architecture. Its enormous engineering project began under the emperor in the Qin dynasty and was connected together earlier defensive walls to protect the empire. So this emperor took the existing portions of the wall and started connecting them to create one massive wall that was initially supposed to help protect them from enemies. Judging by the size and scope of the wall, we can tell that the ancient Chinese were concerned with their safety and protection from the northern invaders into their land. Poster 8 has to do with science and technology. How have math and science discoveries affected our life? The 4 great inventions of classical China were gunpowder, compass, paper making, and printing. And again, these are items that we still use every day in our lives. So that concludes our lessons on classical China. Make sure that you've completed all sections of your hyperdoc and your unit assessment to show me everything you learned about classical China. Feel free to go back and rewatch any sections of the video if you need more time practicing your skills and your knowledge of classical China. And I will see you guys in the next video.